Hello, all you smiley, happy people. It's good to be back from the week off that I had. Hope you guys had fun. So, we're going to continue with this whole School of Punk thing, because I am of the belief that there are individuals out there who want to become the best specified bassist, and by specified, I mean a specific genre, not so much an all-encompassing kick-ass bassist. I firmly believe that people eventually want to get there, but first they want to, be good at what they like listening to. And for some people it's punk, for some people it's jazz, for some people it's metal. You get what I'm saying. So I'm starting off with punk. Now, to really become the best specified bassist, you got to understand the music genre from the beginning all the way through now, so that you can understand and draw influences from all across the historical spectrum. Now, punk rock is pretty much agreed upon. There's no definitive start to punk rocks or no definitive origin of punk rock, but just about everybody agrees that punk rock started back in the 60s. Now, I'm not talking about the late 60s, I'm talking about the early 60s with the explosion in the garage rock scene. Now, garage rock started back in the 50s. And believe it or not, I've seen names like Booker T and the MGs pop up on it, in case some of you don't believe it. But, excuse me, garage rock is basically the term garage rock came about in the 70s, where music critics were doing what they can to differentiate between what was agreed to become the proto-punk musical genre and what happened beforehand. Because people were calling this garage rock music punk because of the way it sounded, but once they got proto-punk and the punk explosion of the 70s, because of the classification systems of today, they needed to come up with something different. Now, what made garage rock? Garage rock, you ask? These guys sounded like they were playing in their garage. The recordings varied in production quality, and we'll get more into that tomorrow, but it basically sounded like a bunch of kids for the very first time getting together and jamming in their parents' garage. And you had different sounds develop as a result of it, but the garage rock explosion of the 60s didn't really start to take hold until 1963. Up until that point, garage rock bands saw regional success at best, and by regional I mean if they were in a specific town, that town radio station would play their music that they recorded and released. And most of them, 99.9999999% of all of the music that they recorded were covers. There are people out there who think, oh, a band or a solo artist can't really be a true original artist because they play covers. They have to do all of their own original stuff. Well, tough shit, honey. Until the Beatles became big, everybody did covers. More than half of a musical artist and or band's set up until the Beatles came about were covers. And the garage rock movement really took off with the recording of the Kingsmen cover Louie Louie. Louie Louie by the Kingsmen, and Louie Louie, oh no, baby, well. That's a cover of a 50s R&B tune by Richard Berry. Look it up. I'm not lying to you. Oh, now, Louie Louie from the Kingsmen. The Kingsmen were based out of the Northwest, the Portland, Oregon, Seattle area. Now, little history about the track first. The Kingsmen would play dances, and Louie Louie was a song that everybody danced to the most. So the Kingsmen learned the song they botched it. You know, it wasn't correct. Like, there was a rhythmic variation to, at the time, the more famous recording. But, you know, they misheard it, but their version is the one everybody goes to. Anyway, so they're at a dance where they just play Louie Louie for hours upon hours upon hours. And there's a guy who gets them studio time for the very next day. They show up, not really knowing what to expect, and what they get is a one-room studio with 3 microphones. They all get crammed in there, and in one take they record the song that we have been listening to since 1963. It's raw. It's rough. It's not polished and shiny like a lot of music that you've heard from the time and hear today. It's very, very rough. The vocals are the way they are because there were only 3 mics in the room. The mic he was singing into was on the ceiling, and he had to pretty much scream just to be heard over the band because they were all in the same room together. Anyway, the Kingsmen didn't like it, but the guy who got him the studio time, who subsequently sent it to radio stations and a record label, they loved how raw and edgy it sounded. That makes garage rock, and that kind of raw, gritty edge would go on to influence punk rock as a whole. Just deep, dirty, gritty guitar tones. Sounds, just everything about it was more rock and roll than what people were listening to at the time. And that's what people liked about the recording. That's what people liked about the genre. That's what people liked about garage rock. Because it got gritty. It got dirty sounding. Just in tone. It sounded more rock and roll than... Well, I can't really say what it sounded more rock and roll. Well, let's agree. It sounded more rock and roll than Bill Haley and its Comets. You know? I think we all can agree on that. Now, tomorrow we'll go into more about what kind of helped define the sound of garage rock, just in terms of, you know, who would fall under the garage rock vein, the garage rock style. Because a lot about today's music scene is, okay, it meets X, Y, and Z criteria within this musical genre, henceforth it is this musical genre. Tomorrow you might be very surprised. You might be very surprised that a fair amount of these bands influenced and shaped the course of punk rock music.